Welcome to the Woodpreneur Podcast, the best podcast for the business and marketing side of the sawmill, lumber, and wood industry. What's a woodpreneur? If you have a business where you make money as a woodworker, sawmill owner, selling slabs, or a content creator, then you're a woodpreneur. My name's Steve Larosiliere, and I started Woodpreneur Life, Acres of Timber, and the Woodpreneur Podcast just for makers, wood entrepreneurs, and small business owners just like you. We're on a mission to empower thousands of wood businesses to grow sustainably and put out great products. Each week, I interview makers, sawyers, content creators, and 6- and 7-figure entrepreneurs that know the wood industry inside and out. With topics covering everything from the urban lumber movement, sustainable sourcing and design, we'll discuss the ins and outs of how to grow, monetize, and fully immerse yourself in the woodpreneur lifestyle. If you're a hobbyist, a full-time wood business owner, part-time entrepreneur who wants to become a content creator, or quit your day job to pursue your dreams, the Woodpreneur Podcast is just for you. Thanks so much for listening. Now enjoy this episode. Hey, welcome to a brand new episode of the Woodpreneur Podcast. This is your host, Steve Larosiliere. Today's guest is Jeff Perry from Angel City Lumber. What's up, Jeff? How you doing?
Good, Steve. How are you?
Good. So we are in the backdrop of the Los Angeles fires. I had a couple of days ago when everything was just kind of crazy popping off. I just started thinking about everybody in LA, and I was texting, I texted you to see how you and yours are doing. Could you just kind of describe what's going on in LA right now?
Yeah, I would say there's just a lot of I don't want to say confusion. There's just a lot of devastation, a lot of heavy hearts. A lot of the people that, mostly the Altadena community and the Pacific Palisades community, were leveled. And we're not allowed to go to those areas yet, but it just seems like completely disorienting. There's nothing left, really. Everybody, I feel, in this city knows someone directly or knows somebody who's directly affected, and everyone's trying to rally to help. I think like a lot of events like this, sometimes you get a little stymied and frustrated because you're not sure how to help. So there's a lot of organizations that are trying to facilitate that. But yeah, it's a pretty dark time.
Yeah. I almost felt like just immediately talking about your business in the backdrop of all of it didn't really kind of make sense. So I hope you don't mind talking about it. I have a 20 plus year relationship with Los Angeles, and it's a place that's near and dear to my heart as well. With all that, how was 2024 for you?
2024 was a good year for us. It was our best year thus far. We've been learning and growing a lot over the last 9 years. It took us 9 years, I feel like, to kind of make a really positive turn, which may sound like a long time, seemed like a short time, really. And I guess since we're talking about the backdrop of the fires, this, maybe an unintentional theme of this episode, but, we're very much interfacing with the U.S. Forest Service locally in the Angeles National Forest here. We have a timber sale contract with them that has really helped navigate where we're headed. Our mission is to reconnect Angelinos to Los Angeles trees, and the portion of the Angeles National Forest that we're dealing with is all within Los Angeles County, which is what we limit our sourcing and sales to keep a very local model. So the sale contract has really been exciting in a number of ways. It's certainly given us a lot more supply from the log perspective, but what I mean by the backdrop of the fires is it's really exciting in the sense of we feel like we're actually starting to open up the issues that are with forest management. And I think the Forest Service is really actively doing more to understand, like, hey, how do we rectify the situation so we don't end up with these massive conflagrations? So we're taking a lot of snag trees, hazard trees that would otherwise get mulched up there or be left on the floor, and we're hauling them back to our facility, and we're making lumber.
Yeah.
To basically clean up the forest floor. So that's been really interesting. And we're actually thinking about ways in which to make structural timber, certified structural timber from those trees to help rebuild the homes that are devastated.
Devastated, yeah. You know what's really interesting too is like the firefighters, like they were using prisoners, right? Did you know anything about that?
I don't. I mean, I certainly read about it, but not. I just saw headlines. I don't know much about
Just headline. Yeah. Anyway,
it.
it just kind of got me thinking too, just like about, and it's so interesting. You said you have the relationship with, with the Forest Service and how you're cleaning up and just like, it's like the trees that are burning, trees that could be used. It is like this crazy, it's like this very meta level conversation, especially like talking to you. And I remember when I hosted the Woodpreneur event at your place. One of the things that, I mean, you're one of the very, very few rare people that are like, you're like nerd meets passion level in terms of trees. And it was like, it was fair. There, I mean, there are nerds, but then they're like, it feels like nerds out of obligation. Like it feels like you have a very deep connection to these trees, and you see them for what their highest potential is and what they could be instead of what they are right now. So yeah, I don't know. Just tell me like as a, someone that like you've committed, so much of your career to this, like, how are you viewing before these fires? Like, how are you viewing the state of urban lumber just in terms of opportunity and just sort of global acceptance?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you the full cycle of it. So when I first started as a carpenter and started learning about the urban forest and what happens to trees in the urban environment and that they get mulched when they're removed, it was surprising to me and shocking to me. And I don't think I fully understood why it was so shocking to me. As I started our business and started milling trees and started getting more participatory with trees, it started to dawn on me why it was so upsetting and over time. And I think what you're saying about the potential of trees and the potential of the forest is I started to feel like that we were just really disconnected from trees as living beings. And it was just becoming like I'm a business person. It was just becoming like a commodity. Right. And so I got to the point where I was like, well, if we keep going down this commoditization mindset, we're never going to really pull the thread all the way and say, well, why do we care about trees? If it's simply just because they make good lumber, then I think the conversation could stop at, cool, let's think of the most efficient way to make lumber. When you start pulling the thread and you're like, well, the way we treat trees is like the way we treat each other. It's the way we treat our flora and fauna and food and all this. Then it becomes a bigger conversation. So I've just really, me and my team, like we've just been pulling the thread slowly and being inquisitive and wondering like, interesting, now what? And then these opportunities like this Forest Service relationship start, and we pull the thread more and we're like, oh, okay, well, we were so focused on the urban forest only, and now we're focused on the urban forest and the wildland urban interface. And it's like, whoa. So we just keep learning, asking more questions. And in the background of like you're talking about, the nerdiness comes from, well, how do we look at trees as community members and not a resource?
Yeah. The other thing that I also think about is I look at trees the same way, not just as like a commodity, but more of like an opportunity, right? And so, not only is there an opportunity to give trees a new life, but, clean up the forest floor, provide, right? Just like provide a story in a home or a business, right? But then I also look at it like, so like you look at Los Angeles built around entertainment, right? Or if you look at, even in Orange County, right? Like Orange County is like the industry is, let's just say it's, I don't know, tech or, surfing or what have you, right? I almost feel like there's gonna be
because we don't have a supply problem, we have a demand problem, right? Like not enough people actually know that those trees could be used for something else. And so for me, I was like, I see that as an opportunity to just like really like create massive amount of economic opportunity for people and jobs, and to have people that are connected to the trees, working the trees and seeing them from, raw form to final completion, and just like so like you have nature that's growing the trees and it falls, and then now you can have the opportunity to have so many different so many different hands that will touch the trees and the lumber before it becomes its final use. And so like, I don't know, to me it's like, it sounds poetic, but like that's literally the way that I see things. I'm like, oh my God, those trees are jobs and like revitalize communities, and just like everything that I know that you see too is like, that like what you've done and what you've been doing with Angel City, is you know the the framework and the blueprint for a lot of change to happen.
Yeah, and to what you're talking about, like essentially the connective tissue. I think that's really, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like when I hear you say that, it's like a local economy reconnects your community to everything around you. And we outsource everything. It's like we're disconnected, of course. And
Disconnected, yeah.
yeah. And when you bring it back to the local economy, like to your point, you're reconnecting. I always say too, because people often are like, oh, that's cool model, but like, there's a lot of great trees up north that could be utilized, and they're relatively local. And it's the relatively local thing that I'm like, yeah, no, that's true. And all trees should be considered. The thing for me is, unless you're talking about trees that are within eyeshot of community members, that's a level of disconnection. Because, if I say like, hey, we have a deodar cedar tree that was in Los Feliz, and someone from Hollywood is like on Los Feliz Boulevard. Yeah, exactly. It's like, it just changes things.
It changes the perspective. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Like many hours away is not a connected, right? Like you might as well just say, yeah, I get my, bananas from Ecuador, right? Like it's just.
Oh. Yeah.
Tell me what was the where did you kill it last year in terms of business? Like what was the product, service? What was the material? Like what was flying off the shelf?
Yeah, interesting.
The proverbial shelf.
Yeah. Well, believe it or not, we're still honing in on products. We're very much still projects heavy and services heavy. And again, that's because we are so fortunate to be in a big metropolis with a huge design community. 70% of our business still is working with architects and landscape architects and design studios who are specifying our material, and then we're custom milling for that project. It certainly helps with cash flow, where we're getting a deposit and then we're completing the job. But we still, to your point, are really geared toward this year. Actually, a lot of our forecasts are based on products, not projects. And we've had a good amount of success with flooring, and we've had a good amount of success mostly with these big chunky blocks of landscape timbers, green wood. Really, we pitch set it and sanitize it in the kiln, but it's, they're big, chunky, massive timbers, so they're still locked with moisture.
A lot of outdoor applications.
A lot of outdoor applications. The flooring is where we're going to put a lot of our focus. We've had really good success with like pilots, and we're kind of doubling down on it now. But I just wanted to, where we killed it, as you say, we've had a couple of really large projects, and one in particular that is utilizing like a lot of board footage from the forest. Actually, it's kind of this perfect the way things work out sometimes is just mind blowing. We got this really our largest job to date, and we needed a lot of material of one species, and it just so happened that the ponderosa pine from the Angeles National Forest worked perfectly, so it dovetailed nice. In a word, products, we're looking to really delve into flooring.
And what species is best or most requested from you guys?
Eucalyptus tends to be our best for engineered flooring. We do a 4mm wear layer, and we laminate it onto a FSC Baltic birch substrate. The Jonca hardness for eucalyptus, or the eucalyptus that we're getting, is somewhere between 2400. So it's super hard. So you can get a lot of life out of it. A lot of refinishes. Architects love that for high traffic applications. And then we also have a Angeles National Forest ponderosa and Jeffrey pine wide board flooring. Right now we had a pilot that was an 8-inch face, and we made it an inch thick with a 1/2-inch layer above the tongue. So again, it'll ding and be soft, but for those applications, it's very homey. It works. But again, with that 1/2 inch above the tongue, it's
basketball court or something. That's very thick, right?
Yeah, it's super thick. And we just, because, it's soft, we want to make sure people are getting enough life out of it. But it's gorgeous. It's vertical grain. I mean, it's, the trees in the forest are slow growth. So in the urban environment, we're getting growth rings this wide. And then we get the forest trees, the growth rings are like, so when we're quarter sawing those, we're getting some really tight vertical grain. It looks really pretty.
When are you finishing them too?
No, we're not. Although we can do pre-finish by request, but generally we're just keeping it raw.
Are they trying to make it look like oak, or are they just trying to are they keeping them natural?
Just keeping them natural. I mean, the clients that we've sold to so far, they just love the look, and they're like, yeah, oh, great. I'm just going to keep it. I mean, they'll finish it with, sometimes to keep it from ambering too much, they'll add a little white pigment to kind of keep it more on the whiter side than the yellow side.
Okay.
I like people are just leaving it.
How'd you even discover that as the application?
Well, for one thing, we got this contract. It was a lot of lumber for us, and we're like, okay, well. And then again, it was in just looking at the end grain of these logs and just seeing the tight grain, which again, in Los Angeles, we're not used to seeing. Like, in urban trees, we're used to seeing these massive growth rings. So when we saw those tight growth rings, we just immediately were like, okay, well, what quarter sawn products can we make? Because that'll be like our vertical grain product. And, we just thought of like, yes, vertical grain timbers, which we're doing. Also, we've got a few jobs with these big structural timbers. One's for like a big rehab center in West Hollywood. But the other one flooring and cladding just seemed like a winner.
Yeah. How like operationally, did you guys grow more people?
We actually, this year, we tried to be really lean and strategic about who's taken on what in order to maximize our labor. And interestingly enough, and I should say also, and really dialing in our process, dialing in clarity of roles, dialing in clarity of expectations. And with those efficiencies, we actually grew, but we maintained the same size team. We added a project manager. That was a big deal. But other than that, it's the same team.
Very great. I remember you, when we met, you were doing like, was it Friday Hangout or like your company meeting or something? Like,
yeah, Log Deck Friday.
Yeah. What was that? Can you explain that?
Yeah, and we're looking to get back to it, honestly. But on Fridays at 4, we'd shut down an hour early, and then we would all go to the Log Deck, which is across the street where we store all of our logs. And we would have what was called a log, so we would do it once a month. And every month, 2 or 3 people would be assigned to share with the rest of the team something about trees or wood that they found interesting and they learned about. And they'd give like a 5-minute presentation to us all. And then after that, and this is, again, we're all sitting on logs and kind of integrating with the logs in the log deck. And then we would open up to like a log jam. And sometimes there'd be people playing music, and sometimes just hanging out and having beers or playing games. And
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So in light of everything that's happened, are you like, how are you thinking about 2025?
Yeah, especially in light of everything that's happened. I mean, it's really funny. All of our planning.
Friend, I don't want to like, call you Elon and be like, how can you maximize profit or what, you know what I mean? Like in light of literally everything that's happened in your city and how what you're doing is so connected to everything. Like, I'd love to just, hear your thoughts. You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah, no, I mean, in light of what's happened, we're just like, again, like when something like this happens, I feel like I was saying earlier on, is like you get to this point where you're kind of making it about yourself, honestly, because you feel so preoccupied with how you can get in there and help.
Yeah.
And you're feeling like this weight and anxiety about like, how can we jump in? And at the end of the day, you're like, well, it's not for me. It's, you got to get out of your own way and put that aside and focus on your community, right? It's not about you. It's about people that really need help right now. So we tried to keep level heads. And again, in light of what's going on, we're really committed to connecting with city officials about what is the emergency rebuild look like, and how can we integrate, knowing that there's this massive wood supply in the forest that this started.
Yeah.
So that's really, as of a week ago, we're like, hey, how do we figure this out?
Yeah. Well, maybe that is it's so interesting. I have a friend, she moved out of Los Angeles, and she's stayed a long time in Los Angeles, and so she's trying to, from where she lives now, she's trying to figure out how she can help, and I hadn't thought about like, oh, how can I help as well? And so maybe we could use this next part of the podcast where we could just brainstorm ways that you could help or move forward, because I think in many ways the opportunity there is to really potentially find new life or connect or advance the cause, right? Like there's always like a catalyst for something in order for a cause to be taken on or change or something. So I don't know, tell me, maybe phrase what you're thinking in terms of a question, and we can sort of we can brainstorm from there.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest question we have right now is who to connect with within the city. Who is it? A design person? Is it a purchasing person? Is it a emergency relief entity? Like,
yeah,
talk to.
For sure. And I think, the thing that I think about too is like you city are probably more uniquely sort of qualified to talk about those trees that are there, right? And so the first thing that I think about is how do you communicate your knowledge about the trees more, right? And then talk about its uses and talk about the applications before, during, and after, and put them either. I mean, you can right now, create something long and then cut it up into smaller bits and pieces, whether it's like a tweet or whether it's an email or whether it's a 2-minute video, to be able to just put it out there, right? That's one thing. The second thing is, if you are able to get near the fire or something near, like get close to it, and then to be able to tell a story or a video or something about a tree that has burnt, right? Like what kind of tree is it? Like how old is it? Because obviously right now the focus is on containing the fire and then helping people, but in the background to be able to like create that narrative of the trees and to be able to say like, hey, look, and again, I'm making this stuff up, but like, hey, look, if this happens in the future, at, day 6 or day 7, if we had cleared up 40% of the floor, then it wouldn't have spread as fast.
Yep.
Right?
100%.
So to be able to just almost like, so if I were to like advise you on something, it's like figure out how to tell more stories of the trees, like like the Altadena fire or the Pacific Palisades, like what is, and you can probably find out online from the from the foresters, like what kind of what percentage of trees, like what are the species of the trees that are there, and how many of them would have been harvestable, or how many of them like are at full growth, or what's in like if we were to replant or reseed, like what would be a better species there that is native, or like what is a part in maybe the southern or the eastern part of the county, like how would that, like how can we start moving some of those sort of species up there, like just almost like take it nerd level and almost future project what happens, because aside from the fire department or the city, or the city forester, which you probably know this person, right? Like on a for-profit basis, on a business basis, like I'm talking to the guy, like you're the guy, like you're the Los Angeles tree person, right? And so the only thing that I would say is like, all right, just kind of step into that role. And, if by chance in like a week or 2 or 3 or in a month, figure out how to like, and I'm trying to think about like your original question is who, like, how do you have one of your mills at a base at the bottom of the hill on PCH? Like that's the visual. Like, how do you have a mill at the base of PCH when they're hauling trees down, that you're just literally milling them and you're putting them, and then you're just like, you're taking them to air dry someplace for like that should be the end goal, right? Yeah. And it's either that or, you're training a group of people with a portable chainsaw mill to mill up a bunch of logs, and you have chains along the face of a mountain to just like, you know what I mean? That's what I see. Right.
Yep. For
Is
sure.
that helpful?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think to your point about like condensing a digestible story and making it, but at the same time, making it specific to these trees, this area, this problem.
These trees, this area, this problem. Did it, when I said that, like, oh, if we had, cleared up the floor, like, is that like a kind of an accurate?
Oh yeah. 1,000,000%. I mean, that's like, yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to oversimplify the situation, but to your point, it's like, well, this is where for thousands of years, people would have ceremonial burn to clean up the forest floor so that it never got out of control. Like, yeah. And now the Forest Service is like, yeah, now okay, we get it. Makes sense now. So we have to reintroduce that.
We get it. It contained burn. You put it there. Yeah. 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 Got it.
And to your point, not all, but a lot of those logs, getting those off the forest floor and making lumber from them for the community, just like to your point earlier, is like, yeah. I mean, talk about meta. I mean, duh.
Talk about meta for sure. Right. Like, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think about all of the, the jobs that could be created just in that.
Absolutely. And you brought up that, prison inmates, there's all kinds of workforce development, all kinds in LA.
All kinds.
Yeah.
All kinds. Oh yeah. And you could probably pay them better than the $5 an hour that they're getting paid.
Absolutely.
To fight the fire. Right? Like,
really.
Yeah. All right. Dude, thank you so much. Tell everybody your website, Instagram, so they can follow your work.
Yeah. We are angelcitylumber.com and at Angel City Lumber, and check us out. And I appreciate the time, Steve.
All right. Thanks so much, man.
All right, man.
Bye.
Thank you.